Me and you, Mac, was at the Brighton game, and we spoke afterwards, and I said, look, I can stomach watching United get beat off Brighton. I can stomach these bad performances. I'm not going to turn against Ruben Amorim because I know what he inherited. I can see what he's trying to do, and I know it's going to take time. I get all that. My worry is that INEOS don't. Is that INEOS at the end of the season take stock and go, well, he's not the guy we thought he is.
Yeah,
that's my worry.
Hello and welcome to Off the Bar. My name is Joe, that is Adam McKola, and that is Jay Mottin. We've got a lot to talk about today. It is crunch time for INEOS. They've been making what they would call the hard decisions, what some people would call silly, maybe even cruel decisions at Manchester United over the last 12 months. But now we'll look ahead a little bit at what they've done, and also, will it work? Will it pay off? There's a lot to talk about, obviously. Let's start with some of these job cuts. There's been a round of job cuts when they first came in. Then there's been this week suggestions of another maybe up to 200 jobs being lost. We spoke about it on the channel already. We'll get into it as well. But Adam, what are your thoughts on hearing this news? I think it was about 48 hours now ago that it looks like there's going to be swathes of job cuts extra at Man United.
There's two ways to look at it. I think obviously you've got the emotional side, the human side, which is obviously you don't want to see people sacked. Most of these people won't be on footballers' wages, they'll be from the local area, they'll be, people that kind of make the club tick over. So you don't want to see things like that happen. But then you look at it on the other side and you go, well, how long have they been at the club now? Not
INEOS.
The people that are being sacked at INEOS.
They officially their bid was kind of
months?
accepted on the 24th of December, but they've been unofficially since February. So we're pushing 12 months now.
12 months.
Yeah.
All right. So we've got 12 months of them. So surely they've been in a position now to judge whether or not these people were actually needed to help a club function.
Yeah.
And the answer to that is probably no. It's just disappointing when you do hear things like, the charities funding being slashed and this, that and the other. And obviously people losing jobs you don't want to see. But is there a side of it where you look at it and go, well, maybe it does make sense from a business sense? Because it could make sense.
And
we don't know if it does. They may be looking at, who are these
Well, they
people?
said...
What are their roles?
The suggestion was that Ratcliffe thought we needed to do this in order to sort of prevent going bust almost. Like, over the last 3 years, we've lost 300 million quid. A lot of that is wasted wages, losses in revenue from sponsorships, from not making the Champions League, and the ramifications that has. Finishing lower in the league has £1 million or so drop off every position as well, or certainly a lot. So maybe we could have saved that 300 million by finishing second and winning a couple of trophies more often, or finishing first. But I think his angle is what you're saying there, Adam, that we don't necessarily need those jobs to function, and as it stands, we're in masses of debt that's only getting bigger as we lose money every year.
But that's the problem that people have, and it's like the banner that we keep seeing, like, your debt, not ours.
Yeah.
It's kind of like you see all this money being sucked out of the club. There was it like 100 million or something close to that, which was just like a fee we had to pay as a club for the sale of shares to go through for the Glazers. It's like, why haven't the Glazers firms that? Like, there's a lot of different bits where you look at it and go, well, we could have saved money there and there, and these are for big £100 million savings we could have made. We didn't have to give a dividend to the Glazers then and then and then, and that would be like £70 million a time or something. So you then look at it and go, well, how is the 40k a year or the 40k whatever to Mudsa going to change things, when really that's where we should stop the bleeding of cash?
Just in terms of a bit of context there, the suggestion was that the job cuts would save around 45 million a year. That was the figure that was quoted. So whether that, I'm not sure if that's entirely accurate.
And
but
I
that's the
think
kind of number
25% 25% of that could have been saved by not giving Ten Hag a new deal and maybe letting him go early. Like, my point here is their bad decisions have, like Dan Ashworth.
Yeah.
You flirted with him for how long, and then he was in the job for less time?
Yeah.
Like, should you have
He was
done
on
your due
garden
diligence?
leave longer than he was at United.
Like, it's just, what did we have to pay him to sack him? 3 million?
Something like that. And a similar fee to get him in the first place.
Yeah.
What do you make of it, OJ?
First of all, we didn't really do an introduction, but good to see Mac after his stint on the overlap as well. Thought he smashed it, bro.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Loved all that.
It's just what I do, innit?
Do you know what I mean? I always think as well, man, like with the whole Lenny Yoro stuff with Scholes, it must be difficult when it's a legend, a club legend who you love, but you don't agree with what he's saying. And it's like, are you going to argue with him? Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm always a bit like, Because in my head, I think I'd be like, yeah, like well, you were like, no, I don't agree. I think he's, you know, a good player.
I think Scholes is right about most, like, and even with some of the stuff he says, it's like at the time you go, I don't think that's right. And then 6 months later, it's like, oh, fucking hell, he was right. But there are some things where I just think, like with the Delit thing, I think he's made his mind up on him early and he's stuck to it. And there's part of me, it's like, I feel a bit disappointed. Not angry, I don't. Because I'm just buzzing to be there, chatting to Scholesy, you know what I mean? You know when he says my name, I think,
yeah.
I like look around. He just said my name.
Yeah.
Or he goes like, yeah, like me and Adam, or like, and I'll be like, me and Adam?
Yeah. That's
I'm
class.
Adam in
That is class.
I get to be Adam and he's full
There's not even a debate around Scholes. He's just top tier, innit?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
maybe the best.
The word legend gets bandied around for basically anyone who's played for United at times, but with him, he is. And he's genuinely one of the best.
Because when the Overlap put the reels on Instagram, so they'll tag me, Scholes, themselves, obviously Carragher's usually in it as well. And then it's as collaborators, we'll get the notifications for all of them. Bruv, the amount of Argentinian like flags and emojis and like obviously they speak Spanish, don't they? Like all the Spanish you're seeing in there, like it's like,
how come?
because obviously Leacher replied to it, didn't he?
Oh, did I? I didn't even see that.
So Leacher responded to Scholesy. Scholesy said, "I just don't think he'll ever be good enough for us to win the league." And he responded saying, "So can you find out?"
Yeah, he did. He pushed back on it, didn't
what
he?
Leacher said. I think it's mad though, because whilst I disagree with Scholes, we're sitting in 14th at the moment, and one of our players is coming out attacking an 11-time Premier League winner. Or however many was he 11?
I think so. I mean, I do get it, and I think
Feels a bit.
I think.
You know what I mean?
I always think a player has got a right to reply. I do. I know what you mean. It is a bit difficult, but I think if you're, and also the way Leacher is, he's that combative type of person. Doesn't really surprise me. And plus, I kind of disagreed with Scholes. So I think Scholes obviously is legend.
Do you think that contributes to?
I think Leacher's not one of the problems at Manchester United. I know he's injured now, and that is an issue. But as a player, I think he is.
I thought Sancho was a dickhead for saying the freedom thing, because it's like, bro, what have you done with your freedom? You know what I mean? You've done fuck all. It's not like you're tearing it up, and you can go, oh yeah, I understand. But could the freedom thing, and like I think Sancho couldn't deal with the weight of the pressure of playing for Man United, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I think he feels a bit freer now. And he can probably lie in late and play Xbox and all that, and he's happy to get away with that. But like, do you think some of that freedom is freedom from the pressure that some of our legends put the current players under?
I think that's probably a part of it. It's not just them, but we were chatting before, weren't we? It feels like the main things I can think, and they've not had a lot of good things to comment on, admittedly, but the main things I can think of about Scholes and Neville or Keane or whoever it may be, talking about United or Rio even, are the negative quotes and the negative kind of opinions, like the Yoro one and like we said before, Neville, when he was having to go at Bruno Fernandes, saying that he wanted to come off against Liverpool, he was asking to be subbed when he wasn't.
Yeah, it was a lie, and
it just wasn't.
He didn't rescind it ever.
No, and it just stuff like, that's the club captain you're talking about, and surely you want that person to be successful at United, and it feels as though there's such a obsession with what the standards used to be like, and they've almost been sort of I don't know, solidified so much that if anyone does anything that's remotely not 100% perfect, it's like you wouldn't have survived in our day. It feels a bit like people used to do mad stuff. People used to go out and get drunk and cheat and crash their cars and fail tests and hand in transfer requests, all under Sir Alex Ferguson, and still play at the weekend and still be club legends. I think like the standard now is, you don't work hard in training. You wouldn't have got away with that then. Well, you do way worse than not work hard in training. I also think, how you just said, like, they probably have a view like you wouldn't have survived in our day because the standard was so high. Actually, I think it's the other way around. I think it'd be more difficult to survive and play well now. Yeah. Because back then you had Fergie controlled everything. He set the culture of the club. So you would have fell in line from the minute you got there anyway. Yeah. And if you were maybe a little bit out of line at times, he protected you. Yeah. We don't have any of that anymore. Like, players don't have that protection. They don't have that culture. They don't have that dressing room of pure leaders. No. Like, maybe when things were going a little bit awry for Giggsy, I remember around 03, 04, when maybe it wasn't as fancied as much for a little bit, or people were possibly talking about he could go to Inter and Juve and all these teams. Yeah. He had a dressing room around him that would pull him in, keep everyone together.
It's kind of like a little thing with Rashford where put him in that environment from the start of his career. I think you see a very different projection, and that's why I think when we talk about Rashford, it's multifaceted. Yes, you can talk about him and his individual responsibility and his personal responsibility to stuff that he's done, but also like look at the culture of the club. It's massively different, and I think if you take some players out from back then who we look at as icons and legends, and you put them in now in this mess, I think they'd struggle as well.
It is hard.
But social media's a thing as well.
I was just going to say that's
like,
a huge thing.
Well, you talk about players going out and getting levered, and we used to hear stories. You'd hear them out. Like Fergie used to get a phone call, didn't he?
Yeah.
Social media wasn't a thing. You'd be seeing that on social media now. You'd be getting trolled on social media if you had a bad game, whatever. It's a different world, isn't it?
20.
Yeah, I do think you can criticise, United players. Of course you can, especially someone like Scholes. He's got a right to criticise anyone, but he's certainly no authority on it. But I do feel sometimes you've got to appreciate what these players are dealing with and the difference in going into a team that already has Eric Cantona and Brian Robson and Sir Alex Ferguson as your manager, and going into a team that is struggling when you go into it. When you're given a debut as a teenager in a team that's sitting in 8th in the Premier League or whatever, it ain't the same.
Imagine being Danny Welbeck and coming into the dressing room and you see Rooney and all these run out. It's different now. Like, you imagine the confidence you'd have then to be compared to now where you play well for a few months and then suddenly everyone hates everyone.
Well, that's where it's gone. Sorry to just derail that.
And now you've got people going, speak when you see a transfer worse than Anthony to Man United, and they just say soundtrack the whole bit. Like, social media is, I think in the past you could wipe everything.
Don't ask me that because I won't speak for the rest of
No, exactly. I thought it was one of your videos referring to.
But like before, you could like wipe the press away as they're trying to get at you. If it's in the sun, forget it, ignore it. But when it's a United fan or someone claiming to be a United fan with a picture of Ten Hag as their avatar, calling you the worst player in United's history, and it's got 30,000 likes, that is hard to sort of ignore. Do you know what I mean?
No,
because it's not just a journalist who's paid to kind of agitate. Yeah. These are your fans who are supposed to support you, and you have them slagging you off, abusing you, whether that be with stuff like that or really bad stuff. I think it isn't easy playing now.
And like look, Martinez responding to Paul Scholes is one thing. We saw Jesse Lingard responding to someone on Twitter the other day who said that him, Pogba and Rashford were responsible for ruining the culture of the club. And then when players do respond to it, I know he's an ex-player, then they get more grief.
I like that.
It's just I always think, you know what, you've got a right to reply. Why should a footballer be any different than me or you if we want to reply to someone giving us sticks? We've all had it. Yeah. So I do sympathise with him. Going back to your original, sorry to derail it.
Well, let's just move on a little bit then, obviously, because we did speak about the job cuts the other day on
my thoughts on it.
Paddock Live, but in terms of just generally the waste of money, you mentioned about Ashworth, you mentioned about Ten Hag, and there's another big waste of money in all of this that is to the tune of hundreds of millions of pounds, not just fives and tens, having to replace failed signings. So again, I used this example the other day, but just look at the right wing position as an example. United signed Jadon Sancho for 73 million. Within 2 years, we'd signed Anthony for 86 million because we didn't fancy Sancho there. Now again, we have to come back in the summer again, and maybe Ahmad can fill that slot for a lot cheaper. But there's a decent likelihood that we need another person in that right number 10 slot.
Ahmad was also bought when we couldn't get Sancho.
That's okay. So there, so you can.
That was Imam Palestri bought, weren't in that window. You're right.
So that's a good point. So we spent 12 million on Palestri and up to 40 on Ahmad. Because we couldn't get Sancho, and then the Sancho money, then the Anthony money. So you're looking at somewhere in the region of 180, 200 million quid on that position. And with Ahmad, we may well have found someone, but we may well not have. Like the centre forward position, we've spent big money on Lukaku, we spent big money on Højlund as well. And again, in theory, if Lukaku's the right signing, he'd still be here. He's not 35. What is he, 32? 33?
Our best striker signings have been free, Cavani and Zlatan.
And you think, like, if
Cavani was free, wasn't
if we can buy the right person,
you're right.
If we can buy the right person first time, like Man City haven't had to replace Kevin De Bruyne for 9 years. Liverpool haven't had to replace Mo Salah for 8 years. Liverpool haven't had to replace Van Dijk for 8 years. Like, when you get it right, that saves you so much money. Like, that has to be a big thing in the summer, doesn't it, Adam? That we not just spend money, obviously, but spend it properly. Because then in 3 or 4 years' time, you've saved yourself hundreds of millions replacing these sort of failures.
Yeah, and I think it's also important for us to kind of get ahead of the curve as well. You kind of look at Sancho and how well he was doing. And it's like, we knew Sancho was a talent before he went to Dortmund. Like, you could jump in before they become a £70 million signing.
Yeah.
Or, you know, I know Sancho hasn't shown up to be that, but at the time we all thought, yeah, that's a decent deal. Like, it's what it takes to get a player like that ability, right? So I think getting in, and I think you look at some of the signings we have made, the Chido Obis, the Aiden Heavens, the
Even
Diego
Dorgan.
Leon,
Yeah.
Lenny Yoro, and then there's talk about us possibly getting Kenda in the summer, who could be a 40, 50 million pound signing, but it's a 40, 50 million pound signing that if it isn't successful in a year or two, you can sign and probably recoup at least half of your money. The wages aren't going to be massive because he's a young player, and you're getting him before he absolutely tears it up for a season or two and then he's worth double of what.
Or he's just unsellable for Real Madrid or whatever.
So like it's good to see us trying to get ahead of the curve with some signings as well.
Yeah, I agree.
I think.
I mean, another thing as well is the manager, because looking at obviously how they handled Ten Hag, and we talked about the waste of money, but just from a footballing perspective, they essentially vetoed this season, or burnt this season away in the league by trying to replace him in the summer, failing to do so, extending his contract, or activating that 1 year extension, then giving him 3 months when we could tell, it felt obvious, we said it, that they didn't seem that keen. No. How can you be that keen if you're interviewing replacements?
It's a nonsense.
Then they sack him in October and we're in 13th, I think it was, and essentially this season is over. At the point you sack your manager halfway through the season, you ain't winning anything in the Premier League, obviously, or even getting top four most likely. So they've kind of wasted this season. Now, if we look at how it's gone under Amorim, the results have arguably got worse. They've sort of certainly not got much better in the league. In the Cups, they've been good. But looking at their track record at Nice, and I want to go through the people they've had there since the takeover in 2019. So these are all head coaches or managers. So Patrick Vieira was there when they arrived. He spent 2 years, 5 months there. So the first appointment was Adrian Urseya, and he got 6 months and 25 days before he was sacked. The next manager, Christophe Gaultier, who obviously has got a good pedigree, good manager, spent 11 months and 29 days there. Lucien Favre, another one who was at Dortmund, I believe, wasn't he? He got 6 months and 8 days. Didier Digard got 5 months and 21 days. Francesco Farioli got 11 months and 29 days. And their current manager, Frank Heiss, has been there for 7 months and 12 days. Not a single INEOS manager has lasted for a year.
Like Kim Kardashian marriages, isn't it?
Yeah. And actually, you're looking at it, most of them are in the 5 and 6 month territory rather than the 10 and 11. There's a couple in 11, but there's 5 months, 6 months, 7 months. How much of a worry is that for you? Because these are the people who are Manchester United.
We don't know the context of those, though, which is a problem, isn't it?
In what sense?
Like, I don't know, you might, but we don't know the context, the situation, how the managers were performing.
Yeah.
So I think that is quite important. Also,
but what could it tell
11 months, 29 days is probably a long time. It's probably above an average of what a manager gets at the moment.
Right.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like 2 years.
But
there's a couple of 6 monthers in there which are a bit weird.
2 years though, counting COVID as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it's counting COVID, and they only got him in 2019, and he didn't last a year.
He was on furlough for some of that.
Yeah, like genuinely, like I mean,
no, they are on average. You're looking at like an 8 month period. Like,
that's not successful, is it? Managers aren't. They're not moving on because they're getting offered the Real Madrid job. They're moving on because the INEOS have lost faith in him, which is troubling. And I think we've just sort of assumed that INEOS had learned from that, and because Manchester United are a bigger club, it'd be slightly different. But it is a worry. And the first steps they've made, in terms of the manager and the coaching staff and everything else, the whole Ten Hag interviewing someone else, giving him the start of this season and sacking him, the whole Dan Ashworth thing does worry me. I'd be lying if I said it didn't. Me and you, Mac, was at the Brighton game, and we spoke afterwards, and I said, look, I can stomach watching United get beat off Brighton. I can stomach these bad performances. I'm not going to turn against Ruben Amorim because I know what he inherited. I can see what he's trying to do, and I know it's going to take time. I get all that. My worry is that INEOS don't. Is that INEOS at the end of the season take stock and go, well, he's not the guy we thought he is.
Yeah,
that's my worry.
We can't see him do what they did with Ashworth.
No.
One of the things I would say is, though, that I don't think, again, and I don't know who was in place at Nice, but the footballing structure that Manchester United will have at Manchester United should be a lot better than what the footballing structure was at Nice. And if you're relying on your professionals to make decisions and you're relying on their advice when you're making decisions, you'd assume someone like Omar Barada once they bring in a manager, they bring him in for the right reasons, because of their research, because of looked into the background, and therefore you kind of know he's going to need time anyway. So we need to hope that they're listening to the experts that they've put in place. Otherwise, why put them in place if you're just going to make decisions yourself?
Yeah. So
you'd hope that the decisions are more based off the advice of the professionals and not just Jim Ratcliffe's gut feeling.
Well, that is a concern, because was it like there was report? I think it was our mate Laurie in the Athletic said that one of the reasons Ratcliffe decided to get rid of Dan Ashworth was because he didn't like an interview he'd given, where he didn't take responsibility for the Ten Hag, and apparently them two just didn't get quite hit it off, and he was unimpressed.
I kind of get it though, because if you're being brought into place and you're on some big old contract, and we've waited 5 months for you, and then you get into place and you're just, and again, we're going from reports, and you're just kind of umming and ahhing, and you're not sure, and you're not presenting any options or ideas to the board, they're going to think, why the fuck's this guy here?
Yeah.
Or if the only option you have whenever we have a meeting is, oh, how about Gareth Southgate? It's like, oh, someone get him out.
Yeah.
He keeps making stupid
that worries
suggestions.
me. That does worry me, the managers that they've been through. Because either that's the tendency and the nature of INEOS to sack people after 6 to 11 months, more often 6, or they've hired the wrong people over and over again.
Yeah.
So you're either trigger happy or a shit judge of character. And I don't see how it's neither.
But also the level of manager Nice can attract are going to be those journeyman managers.
Well, potentially.
So there's going to be, do you know what, the kind of what I'm suggesting? It's like Man United should be appointing much better coaches. Like you'd imagine if Ruben Amorim went into that job, he doesn't ever leave. Well, because he's a good coach, right?
That's what to hope.
You're getting managers that are very hit and miss.
Yeah.
Name one of those, like, if one of those managers on there had gone on to do amazing things after, maybe you go, oh, actually, how the hell didn't they see it with him?
Well, I think Galtier, I don't know if PSG poached him, but he went to PSG after. And I don't know if they poached him.
See, that's why I say the context is important. Yeah. Like, he could have been there for 11 months, which could be, what period of time was it? So it was from July. So he did a season there. He had a whole season. Maybe he smashed it so much.
Who did?
Your man Christoph.
Oh, that's sorry.
Yeah. He went to PSG after that and won the league. But I do think that it's still not a good sign, is it? Like we can hope and we can paint it all these different ways, but not every team that isn't winning the league is sacking their manager every 7 months. Brentford, look at Brighton, for instance. They've gone through a few managers, but it's 3 managers over 4 or 5 years. It's not a manager every 6 months. That is a big worry for me. And maybe they've put in the wrong sporting director and the wrong manager over and over again, and they were right to sack them every single time. And I don't know whether Galtier was sort of poached or not, but let's just look at it as a whole. Maybe but then they're employing the wrong people, because there are plenty of mid-table clubs that are more stable, that are kind of improving and growing, that don't just do this. This is a particular extreme version of trying to find the right person, in it. It's kind of trial and error in the sort of extreme. And how much money have they wasted sacking all these people?
I think
that's another question.
No, you're right, and I think it becomes under a microscope more because there's so much negativity around INEOS at the minute in general.
Yeah, of course.
Because of the cuts they're making to staff, which is going to just upset everyone. A lot of people sympathise with the people, United staff losing a job, so they're frustrated at that. That it highlights that. Then you have all these other stories that are coming out. There's it sounds sort of semi-ridiculous, but it shines a light on INEOS, and not in a positive way, that not paying the bill with the All Blacks for the sponsorship. Even silly things, what might seem like silly things, like falling out with Ben Ainsley. You're like, what? Yeah. But it's like every time you see an INEOS story, it seems to be a negative one. So then people start looking at the track record, looking at what else is going on, and then you start highlighting stuff like how many managers they went through at Nice and how much money they've spent elsewhere, and all that other sort of stuff comes to the fore. So I think the issue you've got with INEOS at the minute is they're just going through this spell, and I hope it is just a spell where some of the decisions are very unpopular, so people are looking at past decisions with a little bit more scrutiny.
Yeah.
And I said this on the live last night, and I'll keep saying it. We're probably not going to know yet. We won't know. It's too early. Yeah. 30 months, whatever it is, in their tenure, or a year since they officially took over. It's far too early to tell whether they're going to be successful or not. I mean, you can still give your opinion on decisions they've made, but we'll know, I think, in 1 or 2 years. Even in a couple of years, United are still 13th, then I'll sit on this podcast and say INEOS have been a disaster.
Yeah.
But if we do look like we've shown signs of improvement, you might look back and go, look, I didn't like those decisions they made, but at least there was a reason behind them, and that reason proved ultimately to work.
Well, this is why, like we said at the start, and it's a bit of an overused phrase, but it is crunch time, I think. Like, I think this summer and the rest of this season...
What comedian was that?
Crunch.
That spoke about financial crunch.
Not sure.
Maybe D.L. Hewley. I don't know.
Get involved in the chat in the comments.
Get involved in the chat in the comments. But one big thing where they can save money is the salaries of some of these players.
Okay.
And it is absolutely ridiculous. So I'm going to list some players here, who they are, what they earn, and how much we can save by letting them go at the end of the season. Casemiro's on around £375 a week, which is just under 20 million quid a year. Marcus Rashford, £325 a week, around 17 million a year. Mason Mount, £250, which is about 13 million a year. Jadon Sancho, the same, 13 million a year. Luke Shaw, about 150 grand a week, 7.8 million per year. Christian Eriksen, the same, around 7.8 million. Victor Lindelof, around 6.2 million. And Tyrell Malacia, around 4 million. There are 8 players there that if we get them all off the books, and I don't think any of them would be particularly controversial to let them go, that would save us £88 million a year in wages alone.
Sancho's definitely off it.
Yeah, and that's not even including the transfer
got the
fees
freedom
for
he
him.
needs.
The 40 million for Rashford. Let's say we get 10 million for Casemiro, the 25 million for Mount, the same for Sancho. That's just wages, £88 million
So who's
per
definitely
year.
off? Lindelof's definitely off.
Yeah, definitely.
Malacia's on loan, so it looks like that's being lined up for him to definitely be gone.
Yeah.
Eriksen's contract expires off. Sancho's definitely off. They've got an option. And Rashford and Casemiro is looking very likely, right?
Yeah.
I think Mason Mount will still be here.
50-50,
I don't think you could get rid of Luke Shaw. And the reason I think you can't do that is because of his fitness, not because of my feelings about how good he is, although he's a fantastic player. And then who else? So everyone else is gone, right?
So you've got 6 of those 8 there, amounting to somewhere in
and
the
then
region
also
of
Anthony should be
75
gone.
million a year. Yeah, Anthony's not
Anthony's
even
not
on
on the list.
Yeah.
So 100 grand a week, what's that? So he's probably on about 6 million.
I get your point. You got to hope Rashford does it at Villa though, because if he doesn't, then they could just say we don't want him.
Yeah. And also you've got to hope
Send the
that he
ball
does
back.
it and is also willing to take a potentially 150 grand a week pay cut.
Well, that's
There's that.
yeah.
He doesn't like. We have to accept the offer.
Yeah.
He doesn't.
No.
He can just say, "What? I'm on 300 grand a week now.
Yeah.
I'd rather play 12 games a year for United at that wage at 16 million a year than play every week for half of that." He might say that.
Yeah,
we don't know.
It is worrying, and obviously we've just been a mess when it comes to transfers and also wages, as you can see from that. And some of them you kind of understand at the time. You probably looked at it. Mac was saying about the Jadon Sancho money. At the time, it was a lot, but you thought, okay, this is a player we've been after for years. He's very exciting. He's very young. He could be the final missing piece of the puzzle almost, and obviously he wasn't. But I get it. But some of them, you just think it's just stupid. It's just dumb. Like there's no other words to describe it. It's just idiotic to just throw the amount of money.
I've started doing that,
Like,
You know when people message me nonsense now or comment now, I just go, "You're an idiot."
it is.
That's where I've got to.
Yeah,
now.
it is.
I can't be
entertaining
bothered.
it at all.
No, just you're an idiot.
Like you have to be able, right? United, it seems to me, post Fergie, have never once walked away from something. They've never gone.
away.
No, we ain't giving you 375k a week. That's insane. Not happening. Not for a 30-year-old.
Also, lots of these players are on like 120 grand, and they come to us and
Yeah.
they go, "Here's 350." Who's doing that negotiation? Peter Ridsdale.
That's what I mean. It is. It's that kind of thing, isn't it? I don't recall a time when United went, we've pulled out of that deal, or we've not. We can't get the wages done. It's not happening. It's like whatever they demand, they get.
I think we've done it in terms of the transfer fees a lot. We have done it on that front. But
I
in
also
terms of the
think-
wages, I've never
I
heard of
even
a
think
deal
with some of the
breaking down
transfer
over
fees though,
wages.
like the ones that always stick in my memory, the Harry Maguire one that went on for 2 weeks, Leicester wanted 80 million.
We've messed a lot up.
Yeah, Leicester wanted 80 million, and in the end they got 80 million plus 5 million add-ons. There was the one with Crystal Palace with Wan-Bissaka. They wanted 50 million. We spent 2 weeks in negotiating. In the end, we paid 50 million.
Yeah.
Like there doesn't seem to be a point where we go.
Hoyland the same.
Hoyland, Atalanta wanted 72 million, or whatever it was, and we negotiated for 10 days, and then they got 72 million. Like you never hear, or not very
Anthony,
often.
they went, "We're not selling him, so we need a really stupid offer." And United went,
Stupid.
"We're so stupid."
You've come to the right
The right
place, son.
people, yeah,
Hey,
exactly,
This is
yeah.
how stupid we are.
We'll show you stupid.
Yeah, 80 million or whatever it is. Like, this is insane. You have to be able to go. Even City, who spend money all the time and have got like, you know, obvious of broken rules left, right, and centre. But even then, like with Cucurella or whatever, they walked away from
That's
it.
because though, as well, a lot of the decision making behind some of our transfers was, what is the impact that's going to have off the pitch?
Yeah.
So you know when they're discussing contracts and they get into there, because there's been such a furore built up, and you can't tell me the club weren't thinking of these things like off the pitch as well, like social media hits and retention,
that thing that
millions of views, and all
whether it
this.
was leaked or whether it was pushed out by United. It was like a press pack that talked about. I think it gave examples of United players' Instagram followers before they arrived and after, and talking about how the Sancho and the Sanchez and the Pogba deals, the number of impressions they had, and they were the biggest transfers ever on social media. They literally sell that to companies.
Yeah.
And I think, like you said, that was a huge part of, well, let's get Pogba.
Well, we can't pull out of a deal now.
We can't mess it up now because he's going to get us, I don't know, 250 million impressions across his announcement.
And we can sell that.
And we can sell that to sponsors. And they do that. That's not a conspiracy.
They
do that. They absolutely do. It is a real thing. And hopefully we're doing that less and less.
Look, I like that's the one thing I think they have got right is what players they're targeting.
Yeah.
And the type of players they're targeting. Even if I don't have a really clue about who the players are, I'm just glad to see us targeting. Like remember when we got like Nani and Anderson and we didn't even really know who they were. They were just good young upcoming players. It's good to see us targeting that profile of player.
Yeah.
Because you end up with a Nani and an Anderson who's scoring a Champions League final penalty shootout.
Do you think as well, Jay, there's a chance that the players we've listed there, I think other than Bruno Fernandes, that's basically all of the top earners at the club. Almost all of them anyway. Yeah. I'm trying to think of someone who would slot in there that we've not mentioned.
We've cut the wage,
Maybe
because
Harry
wage
Maguire.
bills are reported like staggered, aren't they? Like when they say United's wage bill is this, it's actually what it was like that time last year.
Right.
Like really, when you see somebody's report, United's wage bill has been trimmed so much.
Yeah.
When you look at the players that are off the wage bill, like the Varane, Martial, Cristiano Ronaldo. You know, Jadon Sancho's been off the wage bill for a bit.
Rashford
is now, and just think, there's so many players that have left that were just on ridiculous dough.
Yeah. And I mean,
we have trimmed the wage bill a lot.
If you take most of these players out, and
David
again,
De Gea,
there may be some arguments
around
Mason Mount and maybe even Marcus Rashford, obviously. But like you look at those players, if you take those out of the squad, all of a sudden the average wages of the squad probably goes down by like a quarter.
Yeah, it's
like
tiny.
people are on 100, 120 grand a week, and your big earners are on 250, not 375, 380.
I kind of get that, even though United are terrible at the minute. I kind of get that an experienced England international or whatever that plays for Manchester United, the biggest club in the land, would be on at least 150k a week. I get that. I understand it. I might not agree with it, but I understand it. It's not like, oh, that's unbelievable. It's when you're getting players on almost 400k a week. That's when it's like,
sit on the bench as well.
How has that happened? Who's like signed off on that? And I understand the reasoning behind it, but it doesn't justify it. It doesn't make it make sense. It just leaves us in this situation now where we're skint. We're going to have to sell probably at least one player this summer is going to leave United we don't want to sell as fans.
Yeah.
If we're going to fund this spending and going out and get Gyökeres or whoever, there's probably going to be a player that goes and you go, I wish we didn't have to sell him. I don't know who that would be, but it's more than likely because we've been left in this predicament where we've just wasted millions of pounds on players that are no good. And I like Casemiro, he's a good player, or he was. But it pains me when I see him warming up every week. And I think we're paying him 375k just to warm up. Yeah. It's not his fault, but that's where we're at. Do you know what I mean?
Some of these players, like at least with Rashford, part of his wage was a reward for things he'd done for Man United. Yeah. Casemiro's wage was all potential. And the potential of a 29-year-old. Like, I get it with some of these people, but a lot of these players, or half of them or so, that's their first contract at Man United and they're on that. At least with Rashford, he's worked his way up by having 30-goal seasons and 20-odd goal seasons multiple times. Some of these people, you come in and you're immediately on 375 for never playing a game. It's crazy.
It's crazy, and it's like you mentioned, Malcolm, the Anthony deal, where it's like, see how high you could go. One of the reasons that Ajax didn't need to sell Anthony was because they had a load of money. Because we'd give him a load of money for Lisandro Martinez. So we've given him a load of money, 54 million quid.
They sold someone else at the
time.
They
had sold someone else as well, but part of the reason was because we spent a load of money. So they're not in a situation where they have to sell Anthony. They're like, well, we can keep him. We'd valued him at 35 million quid.
I think went as well.
And we went out and spent 80 odd million on him. That makes zero sense at all. let alone all this nonsense with some of these wages. It's just that is one of the reasons why, because this is all filters down. One of the reasons why I feel for Amorim, because you've inherited an utter shit show. And you've got players that are in
I'm glad he's got it now, man, than in the summer. Because trust me, some of these players in the summer will pull the wool over your eyes, man.
Yeah.
When we're all out in
you'll be
America.
signing
Pearls again, and it's like, we beat...
Well, actually, he might be all right for the new manager.
Yeah. We've had that a few times, haven't we?
We can't afford that.
Yeah, I've been on them ones. That's why my predictions are always grossly exaggerated.
Yeah, same.
Watch a bit of pre-season and I'm like, come on.
We're winning it.
21 is coming. Yeah. No, it's not. Relegation is.
Thank you very much for joining us. This has been Off the Bar. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Jay. Thank you for everyone at home as well. Hit subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Get your thoughts in as well. Is it crunch time for INEOS? Are we seeing all of these negative things that they have to do and then we'll see the positives, or do they not know what they're doing? Let us know your thoughts in the comments.
I don't know what you're doing.
See you in a bit.